I want to talk a little bit about some anatomy today, obviously. So I'm gonna get it back up in just one second. But I want to show you guys the piriformis muscle. We're gonna do a little work on the sacroiliac joint today and kind of keeping the sacroiliac joint in a nice, stable, healthy place. So hold on, let me just screen share again and see if I can get this up properly. Okay, Ruth, tell me, can you see it? Can you see my anatomy guy? Okay, perfect. All right, so here, let me just get his pelvis. So it is a male anatomy model. And just in case you're wondering, this app is called 3D for Medical, number 3, letter D, number 4, and then medical. And it's a great anatomy app. Some of it's free, some of it you have to pay for. But if you ever want to, geek out on anatomy, this is a good one to do. Okay, so here's the pelvis, right? And here's the sacrum. I think you guys all know this, but just a little review. This is the sacroiliac joint right here. And I'm going to turn this guy around so that we can see, kind of three-dimensionally. Look how three-dimensional that joint is. The sacrum and the ilium of the pelvis. This is one of those cool joints that's not just like flat Stanley, right? It has a very three-dimensional flavor to it. And with this sacroiliac joint, where the ilium of the pelvis meets the sacrum, we have a lot of amazing ligaments first. So I'm going to just show you all the layers of ligaments that hold things together on your sacrum. Isn't that amazing? So this is your sacrotuberous ligament, and it's one that we can tweak out a lot in all sorts of ways, by slumping, by having weird patterns of movement. Yoga postures that get a little too extreme can really mess with this ligament. And then the other thing I wanted to just show you real quick is the sciatic nerve. So look how big and fat the sciatic nerve is, and it passes through this little tunnel here that's made by one ligament. Okay, this is your supraspinous ligament. I'm sorry, your sacrospinous ligament. And it creates this little hole for the sciatic nerve to pass through. And then if we add the muscles on top of this, I'm going to go until we get to the piriformis muscle. So this is the piriformis muscle, which many people have heard of. It's in the back of the body, right? And it connects your sacrum to your femur bone. This is your femur bone right over here. And you can't really see it very well because I've layered stuff, but it attaches onto your sacrum underneath there. And it, for most people, lands right over top the sciatic nerve. It's one of those muscles that's funky for a lot of people congenitally, though. Some people can have the sciatic nerve running straight through the middle of the muscle or over the muscle, but for most of us, the piriformis lands right over top the sciatic nerve. And a lot of times, piriformis syndrome is a type of pain pattern where the sciatic nerve can get pressed on by the piriformis, or really any other muscle or fascia or scar tissue that can grab onto the nerve anywhere after this point as well. But a lot of times when we have weakness or tightness in this piriformis muscle, we can get some of that sciatic nerve pain. Also, the piriformis, its main job is to stabilize the sacrum. So let me take away, or to stabilize the sacroiliac joint. So you can see it attaching to the sacrum now, kind of to the front edge of the sacrum and to the femur bone. And it crosses right over the sacroiliac joint and over the hip joint because it attaches onto the femur bone. So it crosses two joints, which is kind of amazing. And it helps to really stabilize. It makes like a pelvis sandwich from the sacrum to the femur bone. It sandwiches the ilium in there and keeps things nice and steady. It also is very responsible for abducting the leg, like when we bring our leg out to the side away from the midline. And when we're standing up straight and tall, it's responsible for externally rotating, like turning our leg out, turning our knee out, turning our foot out. But when we bend the knee, this femur bone right here, the head of the femur bone, when we bend the knee and this thigh bone moves, the piriformis actually ends up adducting or bringing the femur bone. I'm sorry, its action internally rotates the femur bone instead of externally rotating. So it's kind of a cool muscle in the sense that it can have a lot of different functional patterns on the body. And its main job is to stabilize the sacroiliac joint. So I'm going to come out of this app now and come back so we can actually do some yoga, right? But I want you to know about it just because a lot of what we're going to work in our practice today is going to be about stabilizing the sacroiliac joint and getting it to a place where we're not all loosey goosey. So this joint is like, you know how when you have two pieces of Velcro stuck together? The sacroiliac joint is like Velcro. It's not meant to move, right? It's got cratered surface on the articulating surface and it sticks together. And so we have this ability to slide and glide in a lot of joints in our body, but our sacroiliac joint is not one of them. We're wanting to stabilize this joint. It's a center of gravity. It's a center of absorbing impact from the earth through our legs, through our pelvis, and it also is weight bearing for all the weight above us. So it's a very centralized joint in the body, and we want to take really good care of it. When we overstretch in yoga, with especially poses like pigeon pose, where we externally rotate, we tend to pry open. It's like a can opener on the sacroiliac joint. We pry open the sacroiliac joint by over rotating in the hip openers. So we want to be very careful when we're doing poses like pigeon pose that we're stable, that we're hugging to the bones, that we are supported in any way we can, so that we keep this joint as protected as possible. If we stretch out the ligaments, they don't bounce back really well. They're like, an old pair of sweatpants. That's always my analogy. An old pair of sweatpants with the elastic just all stretched out. The only way you're going to get those pants to fit you again is to tie a rope around your waist, right? And so the muscles are the extra rope that you tie the pants on with because they won't tie themselves. So our muscular engagement can help stabilize the joint if our joint has loosened up, our ligaments have loosened up. So our practice today is going to be a little bit about stabilizing the piriformis, stabilizing the SI joint. So let's go ahead and sit up straight and tall and think about, if you've had piriformis, if you've had a piriformis syndrome before, if you've had sciatic nerve pain, either from lumbar spine issues or piriformis issues or any other catch on that sciatic nerve, you know the challenge, right, of what that can feel like. So let's sit up straight and tall, have some support underneath you, come to find a grounded place where you can kind of rock back and forth for a moment, sensing into the way your sit bones feel, and see if you can get that sense that you are right down in the center of your sit bones, that we're grounded and steady here. And see what it feels like to have some extension in the spine, that we're not slumping down and bearing all of our upper body weight down onto those ligaments, but we're actually a little light. We're bringing ourselves into balance, harmony of rooting and rising. Allow the shoulders to soften, allow the eyes to soften. Come into a state of deep relaxation. Let the skin release. Let the eyes release. Any tension you feel around your skull, see if you can drop and let go. And then come into the breath and see what it feels like to travel the breath down the spine. See if you can let the breath touch the front of the pelvis, inside the anterior surface of the pelvis. See if you can feel the breath kind of sweep across that anterior surface of the sacrum, of the sacroiliac joints. A lot of times our sensing is from the back. We think the sacroiliac joints are in the very back of us. See if you can feel on the inside. Do you have even weight on one side to the other, or do you lean into one side more than the other? Feel a sense of softness come with your breath. Let's go ahead and place your hands together at your heart and bow in, offering an intention. And let's go ahead and release our hands. So my kitty, you can probably hear my cat meowing like crazy in the background. I'm hoping she's okay. All right, so you need a block and you need a strap to begin. All right, so come onto your mat. And let's have the sense that even before we do our warm-ups, we're going to do this as a setting of the sacrum. Okay? If you have sacroiliac joint problems to begin with, like if you're experiencing a current flare of sciatica or anything like that, I want you to only do both actions of abduction and adduction with your knees hip width apart. We're going to do 3 different positions with this, but if you're currently in a flare with your sacroiliac joint, I want you to only do the hip width apart version and stay with that. So we're going to lie on our back and take your strap and put it around your thighs. We're going to tie it snug, knees together, ankles together. Okay. Place your feet down, knees bent, feet down on the floor. And just be restful here for a moment. For a lot of us, it's not very restful to be this close. We'd rather have our legs hip width apart, so maybe you are hip width apart. But if you're starting here, just notice this. So with that piriformis muscle being responsible for abduction, we're going to start with that. So before we start to, eventually we're going to bring our thighs into the strap and push away from the midline and then release back in. But first, before we do that, ground through your big toes and your inner heels. They like to lift up off the floor when we do this, so let's keep them rooted. Relax your shoulders, feel the elongation of your spine. When you're ready, we're going to use some abdominal strength, so initiate the movement with your core. We're going to take a deep breath in and gently press into the strap with your thighs, about 20% of your effort. And then on the exhale, you're going to release the legs back away from the strap toward each other. So nice and steady, ground the toes, ground the inner heels, initiate from your core. Breathe in as you push into the strap, abducting your legs, pulling them apart from each other, 20% of your effort, and exhaling to bring them back in. As you do this, see if you can sense the sacrum, sense the sacroiliac joints. Can you feel into that part of your body? Is there evenness, balance, or not? Okay, now after this third one, we're going to relax for a moment, and then I want you to loosen the strap up a little bit, and we're going to take the feet hip width apart. So this is where, if you are in a flare, this is where you've been all along. But for now, we're going to do the exact same thing, but our feet are hip width apart on the floor. Okay, so root down through the big toes, root down through the inner heels, initiate the movement from the core on the inhales. Moving into the strap, 20% or so of your effort, feel those SI joints, and then release and come back in to release the tension on the strap. Okay, and twice more, root the feet. Initiate from the core. Inhale as you widen the legs apart. Exhale as you bring them back in. Sense into the sacrum as you do this. Feel into the SI joints. Can you feel that this is setting the SI joints in proper placement? Make sure you're initiating the movement from the core, so you're not just relying on the back body. Now this third direction, we're going to take the legs even wider apart. So loosen up the strap a little bit more. We want our feet and knees a little wider than hip width apart. And the same things apply. Root into the big toes and the inner heels. Initiate, activate your core. Initiate the movement from the core. Take a breath in. Move out into the strap. And a breath out to release back. Let the movement be fluid and smooth. Stay rooted in the toes, stay grounded in your core, breathing in to move out, breathing out to move in. Okay. All right. And take a moment, breathe, take the strap off, and we're going to do exactly the opposite action. Now we're going to hug in toward the center. So we're going to start with the block. Wide apart as you can get, the widest distance. Once again, if you're in a current flare, you're only doing hip width apart, which for most people is the middle height of the block. But you decide. So we're going to take the block in its longest height between the legs. I like it kind of, you can put it where it lands naturally. For me, it's kind of just above my knees. There's a little groove in there for my thighs to kind of hug the block. And now, because we're drawing our knees in, we want to ground the outer feet. So ground through the pinky toe side of the foot. And then initiate from the core. And we're going to hug into the block. And then we're going to release away from the block. Now, it might feel counter to our normal movement pattern, but go ahead and breathe in as you hug the block. Ground the outer feet, use your core. Exhale to release. Try to let the movement be smooth instead of choppy, about 20% of your effort, and see what kind of impact this has on your sacroiliac joint. Can you feel your pubic symphysis, your pelvis? There's a lot going on in your pelvis when you do this. It's very stabilizing to hug to the midline for the sacrum, and it's very stabilizing to hug away from the midline for the sacrum. Okay, let's go ahead and put the block now in the middle height between your legs. This is probably the safe zone of hip width apart for those of you who are just kind of hanging out doing this over and over in one position. Ground the outer feet, initiate from your core, relax your spine. Take a deep breath in and hug the block, 20% or so of your effort, and then release and let that go. All right, about 20% of your effort. As you breathe in, stay engaged through your core. And then let that go. And notice if you have trouble letting go. Is the surrender harder for you or the engagement? Last time, hugging the blocks about 20%. Engage your core, outer feet grounded. And then exhale and release that. And now we're going to take the block on its narrowest height in between our thighs. So we're walking our feet in a little bit more. Decide where you want the block to land. Make it comfortable. Ground the outer feet. Engage your core, hip bones moving toward each other. So feel that transverse abdominis. Hug in toward the block. So, there's a lot of global muscles as you do this. I'll just talk a little bit. There's a lot of global muscles that help you stabilize the sacroiliac joint. It's not just the piriformis. Your abdominal muscles, your pelvic floor muscles, your outer hip muscles, your inner thigh muscles, your glutes, your psoas. So many muscles can help stabilize your sacroiliac joint. So this action engages a lot of different muscles. It's not just, one thing that we're working with, but we're trying to sense, how do we hold our pelvis together? All right, let's go ahead and relax that now. Keep the block at whatever height was most comfortable. For me, it's the middle. And we're just going to do a couple of lifting bridges now. So ground your feet, all four corners of your feet. And we're going to inhale to lift the pelvis up. It doesn't have to be super high. And then exhale to lower the pelvis back down. Okay, so finding slow and steady movements here. Lifting the pelvis on the inhale, grounding the corners of your feet, gently hugging the block, exhaling, lowering down slowly. So it's eccentrics on the way down. See if you can not just drop. And let's try one more time. So activating a whole lot of muscle groups that globally support the sacroiliac joint. Notice if you have discrepancy, if one side wants to rise faster than the other, lower faster than the other. And then let's go ahead and rest the body down. Okay. Have your knees straight now. Stretch your limbs out. And then relax on the floor for a moment. Just sense into your sacrum, the back side of your pelvis. Does it feel alive? Do you feel like you're tipped to one side or the other?
So a lot of times we can have a little bit of a pelvic twist or a torsion where, one hip can be hiked up and move forward and the other can drop back and down. So go ahead and pick up your knees now and put your feet flat on the ground again. And we're going to move our knees left and right about 6 or 8 inches out to the side. And just pay attention. Put your mind's eye right in the back side of the pelvis and see if you can feel just one side of your pelvis. Do you have more weight on one side of the pelvis or another? Like for me, I can feel the posterior superior iliac spine, that like pokey outy part on the back of the pelvis. I can feel that ground into the floor more on my right side than my left side. So whatever works for you, you might have balance. Okay. So I'm going to just teach you a little that if you do find that you're a little more rooted on one side than the other, we're going to go ahead and bend the opposite knee. So for me, my right side is grounding. So I'm going to bend my left knee and interlace my hands behind my left knee. And then with my right leg, I'm going to stretch it out onto the ground, and I'm going to bring it out a little bit. See if I can bring that leg out to the side, and I'm going to suspend it in the air just a little bit off the ground. Find the breath and just stretch that leg, whether it's your left or your right. And maybe you didn't find either, so you're just kind of hanging out with your knees bent. And then go ahead and relax. Bring 2 knees into the chest. And now let's rock. Rocking left and right. See if you can feel the sway. Breathing deeply. All right, and then circle the knees and just see what it feels like. How are your SI joints when you kind of roll over one and then roll over the other and go the other direction? Okay, and then we're going to move our knees apart from each other and back in. And just see what that, abduction and external rotation starts to feel like around your sacrum. Opening up the hip joints. Great, and then right knee into the chest, left leg long on the floor. Roll around your ankles. Feel some length in your spine. And then switch sides. Left knee into the chest, right leg long on the floor, and see what it feels like to roll around. Move those feet, open things up. Okay. And then stretch and lengthen your body out. Separate your legs so they're a little wider than your hips. Stretch and lengthen. And then exhale, pick up your head. Knees in. Stretch and lengthen. Spread your body out wide. Exhale, pick up your knees. And draw them in. All right, then let's roll over onto our side and come up onto our hands and our knees. All right, so start to find some cat-cows. See what it feels like to move the body. Okay, so dropping the tail, dropping the head, finding some movement here as you move the spine into flexion and extension, and then move things around. Maybe you want to move your shoulders. Maybe you want to swivel around in your head. Maybe you want to move around in your spine. Okay, so you can do some circles with the pelvis. Breathing deeply. And then stretch back to child's pose. Take your knees wide. Lengthen through your spine. Reach your arms out in front of you and just feel some sense of space across the back of the pelvis. And decide, experiment. Bring your knees a little closer. Bring your knees a little wider. And see what gives you a comfortable feeling across the backside of your pelvis. Once you have that, if your arms are overhead, that's great. If your arms are down at your side, that's great. Whatever's working. I want you to feel the breath travel down the spine and come underneath the sacrum, like a hot air balloon can lift the sacrum up and then release the sacrum back down. See if you can have some buoyancy underneath on the anterior surface of the sacroiliac joints. All right, and come back up onto all fours. And this is a really good stabilizing thing for the sacrum. Stretch your left leg straight back behind you. Feel your glutes engage and hug on to the sacrum and onto the pelvis. And then go ahead and stretch your other arm out in front of you to feel the muscles along the right side of your spine engage. So for those of you who've learned about the multifidus muscle from me or from somewhere else before, the multifidus on the right and the glutes on the left hug onto the sacrum. The multifidus attach onto the sacrum. So when you engage them, what we're doing here is we're hugging muscle groups onto the sacrum from above and below and from left and right. And this is very stabilizing for the joint. Engage through your core. And then go ahead and release the hand and the knee down onto the ground. Move around, loosen that up. Then we're going to switch sides. So the right leg's going to go back behind you. Feel the glutes on this side, hug onto the sacrum. And if you're able to, stretch the left arm out in front of you and feel the muscles along the left side of your spine attach onto the top of the sacrum. Have that cross hemisphere hug onto the sacrum. Complete it with that global support of your core. Notice how your core completes that circuit and keeps you engaged from a much more regional perspective to stabilize the sacrum. And then release and relax and let that go and come back to child's pose again. Decide where you are best suited. Knees close, knees hip width apart, knees far. Breathe again into the back side of your pelvis. And spread open the hands, curl the toes under, and find some length in your spine. Reach on up. Feel a sense of expansion in your body. Feel the sit bones lift up. Feel free to pedal your feet or bend the knees, swaying from side to side. Have any kind of movement here that you want to have. Breathe deeply. Relax your neck, soften the skull, push off the floor so that you're extending the heart up toward the hips. Have as much of a reach in the body as you can find. Open things up. Relax your head. Now to stabilize our sacrum here, we're going to isometrically pull your feet apart from each other to wake up that piriformis muscle and some other muscles too. Breathe well. And then go ahead and walk your feet forward and fold in half. Relax your head. Breathe deeply. Inhale for a halfway lift. The spine grows a little bit taller. And then exhale and melt and fold back down again. Find the breath. Inhale for a halfway lift. Thigh bones move back. Exhale and melt again. Climb up, push off your feet, come up to stand, reaching the arms up to the sky, open the chest, find your breath, and then let's go ahead and relax. Again, roll your shoulders. Since we're up here, let's just get the shoulders free, roll the shoulders around a few times one direction, a few times another direction. Feel free to shake out your hands. If you like bigger movements of the shoulders, take some bigger movements. All right, and then relax for a moment. Ground yourself. Yielding is this gift. So when we feel ourselves yield into the earth and the knees bend a little bit, we have that giving. We can drop our breath down into the pelvic floor. See if you can get aware of the pelvic floor here and the connection it has with the soles of the feet. And then rebound up from the soles of the feet through your spine. Can you feel that your sacrum is this sacred bone? That's very much a center of gravity in the body. So I'm just sensing into that. Okay. Take a deep breath in, reaching the arms up to the sky again. Exhale and fold forward. Grab your 2 blocks. Put your hands on blocks for a half lift. So Uttanasana halfway. Extend the spine, extend legs. So the sit bones lift. We're rolling the pelvis over the femur bones, soften the knees.
Spread out the bones of the feet and lift the arches all the way up into the hips. With this long spine and the pelvis rolling over the femur bones, we have a lot of neutralness in our lumbar spine. Let's widen the sit bones. Let the pubic bone pass through the inner thighs, rolling back. And then isometrically drag your feet apart from each other. And you can bend your knees a bit to help you with this. Hug your feet away from the midline and then release. Kind of similar to what we did on the floor with the strap. Hug away from the midline, ground through the big toes and the inner heels, and then release. So it's just an isometric to engage that piriformis. And then one more time. Isometrically engaged. We're trying to pull the feet apart from each other, but nothing's moving. And then relax and surrender. Okay, let's step the left foot back. Right foot comes forward to a lunge. If we have some trapping of the sciatic nerve, this movement can help flow. So if when we do, we do this all the time in my class, it seems to be kind of one of the warm-up things I've included in since we've started doing some online classes, kind of bending the front knee and straightening. If this is too much and you feel a lot of intensity in your sciatic nerve, you can do this a little bit more gently. So you can either keep doing that or you can come onto the floor and bend both knees, feet on the floor, and interlace behind one knee and just begin to straighten the leg and bend the leg. And you can flex the toes if you want as well. So this is a little bit more gentle way of doing that sciatic nerve glide if it's a little too intense. If you're having a sciatic nerve flare, you never want to push to the point of pain because it just aggravates the nerve. So you want to come to a place where you're comfortable. So if it's too much to do the standing version, that's a plan B for you. Okay. All right, let's come back into a lunge. Find your way up. Bring your hands wherever you're going to be for a crescent lunge. Extend through the spine. See if you can hug. Imagine a block between your thighs so that you're finding that stabilization of the midline. Bring your arms wherever you want them to be. And notice if you compress, if you kind of push the sacrum forward. What would it feel like to widen the sit bones, to have a little inner spiral of the thighs so that you have that sense that the back of the pelvis sweeps broadly? It's okay to lean forward a little bit too if you need that to help you stabilize the SI joints. Release the hands down onto the ground and let's walk the back foot forward. Even weight, back to a half lift, hands on blocks, extending the spine. And let's come back with the other foot forward, finding lunge. If you need to come down onto the ground to do that sciatic nerve glide on the floor, you just lay on your back. If knees are bent, feet on the floor, interlace your hands behind your right knee and start lifting your right foot up in the air and back, down. Otherwise, you're staying in your lunge and beginning to straighten that front knee back and forth. You can get a little deeper into that sciatic nerve glide by tucking your chin toward your chest. And it's okay to feel like the zing, the nerve zing feeling, but you don't want to have irritating pain. So if you have irritating pain, or if it lingers after you have the nerve zing, this is a symbol that your sciatic nerve is a little irritated and you should be very gentle. Okay, so whichever you're doing, let's come back to a lunge, stabilize yourself, and come on up with this side. So decide where you want your arms to be. They don't have to be up in the air, and they very much can be up in the air. While you're in this position, notice if you push the sacrum forward, if you kind of compress and lock in there. See what it feels like to inner spiral the thighs, to draw the knee deep back into the femur bone, to feel maybe a little sense of leaning forward, to integrate a lot of your muscles. Press your front heel to engage your glutes. Find your breathing. All right, and then we're gonna go ahead and bring our hands down onto the ground. Back foot comes forward again. Come up to stand, and we're gonna turn to the long edge of your mat. One of the ways that you can protect your sacrum in standing poses is when we come into Virabhadrasana. So remember, your bent knee can be a slightly bent or very bent. We're going to organize around this front leg. So the heel, the knee, and the sit bone are going to line up on one plane. And then organize your pelvis around that femur bone. Where do you need to be in space? So we're going to try to be as open as we can be. We're not trying to turn toward our front leg, but we also are not going to push ourselves into a place where we can't keep that knee stable and we kind of go back and forth like pulling the bones of a wishbone, right? So we don't want to have our pelvis feel like a wishbone. We're not using that can opener to pry open the ilium. We want to be stable. So knee, ankle, and sit bone lined up. Let the pelvis revolve around that femur bone to a comfortable place, and then inner spiral the back leg and take the femur bone back. Wherever your pelvis landed, let your chest land. So try not to go back to the long line of your mat if your pelvis isn't there. Be wherever your pelvis is. Stack your heart over your hips. Find your breath. So in this way, your Virabhadrasana may start looking very different from what you quote unquote see people doing, but you're very protected. Feel how free your sacroiliac joint feels in the back, especially the back leg. And if you try to open up the pelvis, turning the chest, can you feel the compression that can happen on that joint? Inner spiral your back leg. And then go ahead and straighten your knee up, and let's do the same pose to the second side. So we're organizing around our front leg, the heel, the knee, and the sit bone lining up on one plane. Allow the pelvis to move around that femur bone to a place of comfort. If you try to open the pelvis back, check out what your sacroiliac joints feel like. Can you feel the compression that happens in that joint? Can you feel any strain on the ligaments? So allow the pelvis to move to a place where you're free. Inner spiral the back thigh and take the femur bone back, which is different than trying to open the hip up. And then allow your pelvis, your chest to land wherever your pelvis is, right over your pelvis. Breathe your way here. Stabilize the front leg. Press your heel down. Isometrically drag your toes to the left. Heel to the right. Invigorate some of those muscles that stabilize your hip. All right, and then let's go ahead and come on up to stand. Turn your feet to the front. Feet are pointing straight, and we're going to put our hands on blocks. You can even do this with your hands on furniture. So the higher up you go, the longer your spine gets, and it's a little freer for your sacroiliac joints. So remember that one ligament that attached all the way down to your sit bones. So remember, this is where your hamstrings attach too. So if your hamstrings are real tight and it's pulling the pelvis down in the back, you're going to have a lot of strain if you try to lean forward with the spine. So having your hands on blocks allows you to lengthen the spine, giving you a little freedom in the pelvis to lift the sit bones, even if your knees have to bend to do it. So allow the pelvis to roll a bit. This will free up the movement of the sacrum. Breathe well. And then we're going to walk our feet in and come back to the front edge of your mat for dog pose. Extending through the spine here, taking a breath in, isometrically drag your feet apart again. Feel that engagement, that balance. And then we're going to come forward. You can come into a plank, or you can just go right ahead and put your knees down onto the floor, whichever feels best. And then we're going to find our way all the way down to our belly. To stabilize the sacrum after standing poses that are so asymmetrical, it's nice to do a symmetrical posture to reset the sacrum again. So let's curl our toes under, lift our kneecaps up, and take your legs wider on the mat. And then turn your legs out just a little bit so you're landing on the inner edge of your kneecap instead of smack on the center of your kneecap. Lower your torso down, including your head. Pancake your two hands on top of each other and let your forehead rest on your hands. And we're going to lift our legs up with that slight external rotation of the hips. Okay, so this is very engaging for the piriformis muscle. It's a great pose to strengthen the piriformis. Notice if you are stronger on one side than the other. Can you feel how it stabilizes the sacroiliac joint? Engage your core. Remember all that global support. All right, and then let's go ahead and release. Come up onto your hands and your knees. Swish, sway, move, whatever you're gonna do. We're gonna come down onto your back. Okay, back to that oppositional work that can be very helpful for stabilizing the sacrum. We're gonna bring our knees in toward our chest. We're gonna take the right hand and cup it around the top of the right shin, right below the knee. And we're gonna take the left hand and put it on top of your thigh, right above your knee. The knees are in line with each other and hip width apart. And we're gonna press our hands into our knees and our knees into our hands. So we're doing oppositional movement. Our right leg wants to push away from our chest. Our left leg is trying to pull toward our chest, but our hands are preventing any movement. So we're having equal pressure. Breathe as you go. This engages your psoas on one side and your glutes on the other, stabilizing the SI joint. Okay, let's switch. Right hand comes on the top of your right thigh, right above your knee. Left hand scoops at the top of the shin, right below your knee. Feet and knees are hip width apart. Try not to let your knees come offline from each other. Take a breath, press hands and knees into each other. Remember, this is, 20, 25% of effort. We don't have to give it everything we have. Make sure you're breathing. And then relax. Let's do each side once more. So switch to the other side. Right hand on shin, left hand on thigh. Knees are hip width apart and in line with each other. Nothing's moving. Even pressure of whatever your knee is giving to your hand is giving back to your knee. So nothing's moving. Breathing. Global core support. And then relax and switch again. Do you have a pattern that feels more familiar? Do you have one side that you're like, yeah, I like that movement pattern better than the other? Do you have one side that feels stronger? Okay, and then let's relax. Put your feet down onto the ground. Just rest here for a moment. Breathing well. Okay, and then we're going to roll over onto our side and come up on to stand. Okay, so we're going to come to the wall, or if you have a wall is great. So I hope you have a wall somewhere nearby. You can do this with your hand down on a piece of furniture, or you can do it with your arm up on a wall. So we're going to get close to the wall. Of course, I have an extension cord right where I need to be. And we're going to lift the foot that's closest to the wall. So I didn't tell you which side. So whatever side you have closest to the wall, lift over that foot off the wall and take the outside of your foot into the wall. So the pinky toe side of your foot into the wall. Make sure your core is engaged and your knees are soft. Find a little bit of pressure of moving that foot into the wall. Knees are soft, core is engaged. This is going to engage your piriformis on both sides of your legs, not just the leg in the air, but the stable leg on the ground as well. And then relax. Now we're going to switch and come to the second side. So the arm comes up the wall. We're close to the wall. We're going to hover the foot that's closest to the wall, just slightly off the ground, and press the knife edge, the outer edge of that foot into the wall. The knees are soft, the core is engaged, you are breathing. We're not giving 100% of our effort into this. You don't want to try to knock the wall over. Can you feel both sides of your pelvis working for the posture? Soften your knees, breathe. And then go ahead and relax. So last thing we're going to do for the piriformis, to stabilize the piriformis against the wall, is to come down onto all fours. And you can do this against a piece of furniture too, if you want. And we're going to take our right heel into the wall. So just organize yourself. You can do this against a couch or whatever, part of your body can touch something. Whatever piece of furniture your heel can touch.
All right, so stabilize. We're not dropping down. We're integrating into the core. And we're going to just press our heel into the wall a little bit, 20% or so, and then lift the heel up in the air. The outer heel presses a little bit into the wall and then up. So nothing's actually moving, and you should feel this on both sides of your hips. Engage your core. Remember that global support, and then relax. And now we're going to do a little turning. So the heel drops into the wall, and we're going to turn our foot out, and we're going to turn our foot back down. So the toes are going to turn out, and then we're going to turn the toes back toward the floor. And just going back and forth. The heel stays pressing in as we do this action of externally rotating to engage the piriformis and then internally rotating to release it. Remember, because our leg is straight, external rotation is engagement of the piriformis and internal rotation is a release. When we bend the knee to 90 degrees, just the opposite happens. Okay, and then relax, and let's do those same two things on the other side. Okay, so now we're taking our other heel, left heel, into the wall. So you might need to, just kind of like adjust where you are in space so that you have the right angles. Press the heel, soften your knee. It's so easy to lock your knee out. And also, you can have your foot lower than your hip. You do not have to have your foot in line with your hip. So whatever is comfortable. And it also might feel better to have your hands a little forward of your shoulders instead of directly under your shoulders. So see what feels good to stabilize you. Once you're here, knee is soft, and we're going to press the heel into the wall and lift it in the air. Lots of core engagement. Remember that global support that you're looking for. Keep breathing. All right, and now the second variation is to turn your foot out and to turn your foot back in. So we're pressing the heel into the wall and we're rotating from the hip. Try not to let your whole torso turn. We're facing the chest toward the floor. We're keeping integrated with that oppositional hip. So you can feel a lot of work in your right hip with your knee on the ground as well. So just having pressure of your heel into the wall as you turn. All right, let's go ahead and release to come out of there. Come up to stand. We've got one more balancing thing to do. So I'm hoping you're getting a sense of the piriformis muscle, that you're feeling what this muscle feels like. A lot of these deep muscles in our body, especially the back of our body, we don't always have a lot of awareness of. So we're going to come into chair pose, and you can put a block between your thighs if this is stabilizing for you. So squat down, and we're going to put our hands on the outer knees, and we're going to pull the knees apart here. So push just a lot of these things are isometrics. So we're pressing the knees into the hands into the knees, and then release. And let's do it twice more. Press the hands into the knees, and then release. So nothing's actually moving. Third time, knees move back into the hips. Engage your core. And then relax. Let's go ahead and come all the way down to the ground. Come onto your back. Bring your knees to your chest and rock a little bit from side to side. Now we're very gently going to stretch the piriformis now. And remember, the extreme movements of this are what often pry open that ilium. So we want to be very gentle. So we're going to do two of them. Let's start with the more gentle one. Thigh over thigh, right thigh over left thigh. And we're just going to bring the knees to the chest. So this will stretch the piriformis in a way that isn't filled with too much external rotation. So it doesn't have that same torque on the sacroiliac joint that pigeon pose has. So it's a safe alternative to pigeon pose if you tend to slip your SI joints out of place easily, or if they're a little destabilized. This is a gentle way of stretching that piriformis muscle that doesn't usually have too much aggravation. Of course, anything that's aggravating you, if you're in a flare of sciatic nerve pain, you want to be very careful with anything that contributes to your discomfort. Okay, so back off away from the pain sensation. How's your breath? All right, now let's go ahead and relax. 2 feet onto the ground. Let's cross the left thigh over the right thigh and draw the knees into the chest. Breathing deeply here, extending the spine. Fill your breath up, empty your breath out. Can you relax a little bit? Can you feel the sense of ease as your spine rests on the floor? All right, let's go ahead and relax to come out of there. So a little bit deeper of a pose, and this is when you can dole out, um, in varying degrees. So with reverse pigeon pose, which is still not as deep as pigeon pose as far as that can opener effect on your ilium, because gravity's not pushing down on us right now. Gravity's moving our spine into the earth. Okay, so we're gonna put our right foot on our left knee. So if you're in a flare or you can't open very well, walk your left foot further away from you until you get to a place where it's a comfortable stretch. And then you can inch your left foot closer, 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 and perhaps even lift the left foot up and grab behind your thigh, or even better, put your foot on a piece of furniture so you don't have to grapple with your neck. Okay, so you can find whatever variation of reverse pigeon pose, either the foot on the floor far away, the foot inching closer but staying on the floor, reaching to grab your thigh, or putting your foot on a piece of furniture. Find your breath and see what it feels like to stretch open your hip here. Are you okay in your sacroiliac joint? Can you widen the sit bones? Can you nutate the sacrum and lift the top of the sacrum slightly off the floor so there's a low back neutral curve that's intact? Widen the sit bones a little bit more. Breathing well. Stretch through the big toe and the inner heel of that right foot. Move your knee away from your shoulder. And then go ahead and relax. 2 feet onto the ground again, just soften. And then we'll switch sides. Now don't assume the 2 sides are the same. So you can put your left foot on your right knee and walk your foot away from you. You can walk your foot toward your pelvis. You can lift your foot off the ground and put it on a piece of furniture in front of you, or you can interlace behind your hamstring or in front of your shin. Whatever you're ending up doing, have the neutral curve in the spine, the sit bones widen, the left foot stretches, big toe and inner heel lengthens away, the left knee moves away from the left shoulder without letting the right hip hike up toward your other shoulder. So feeling that side body length, stay with the breath. All right, let's go ahead and rest ourselves. Take a deep breath in, feet are on the floor. We're going to lift our hips up and scooch them to the right, bring your knees up and drop them to the left. Open the breath, turn your head. And bring your knees up, readjust your pelvis. So come on to the left side or move to the left so you're on your right hip a little bit more. Bring your knees up and drop them over. Turning your head to the left as the knees go right. All right, pick up your knees now when you're ready. Bring your knees into your chest. any pose that feels good to you. And as you find your way for Shavasana, make sure that you're comfortable. Make sure you're warm. Do you need socks or a blanket or a sweatshirt? Make sure your pelvis feels supported. Do you need a blanket or something underneath your knees? How about your head? Do you need a little pillow under your head? Would you rather be on your side? One of the ways you can support your piriformis when you are on your side, like for instance, when you're sleeping, if you have a bolster or a pillow in between your knees all the way down to your ankles, this will keep your pelvis in a very neutral plane instead of rotating your hip a little bit. So it's a nice way to keep the piriformis happy at night. And then the last thing I'll say as you're gathering yourself ready for Shavasana is the other irritating thing for the piriformis is to sit with your legs crossed, to have one thigh over the other thigh, or have weird, tuck one foot under kind of thing. If you're sitting, try to sit with 2 feet on the floor with your pelvis in a neutral place. This can be very helpful to keep you safe and comfortable with your piriformis. So feel that now. Are you balanced on your left and right sides? Can you feel a sense of ease moving across the sweep of your pelvis? As you rest on the ground, is your spine spacious? The core work that is so intrinsic to so much of our yoga practice, can you let it go now and find a deep sense of ease? Let the breath sweep into the pelvic bowl. Relax your limbs. Soften your face as best as you can, melting any tension you feel. Let's begin to deepen our breath again.
What does it feel like to rest your body just for a breath here? Can you feel everything melt? The support of the floor, support of gravity. And let's begin to find some movement that supports us best. Eventually coming onto your side. Coming up to sit as you're ready. Bring your hands to your heart. Feel that centering pose. Bow into this. Offer your intentions outward. So share your energy. Namaste. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here.